Do you think that the changes in relation to the endorsement lead to closer attention being paid on jurisdictional issues, or has the change in relation to the endorsement caused you to look more closely at jurisdiction? Do you think there's any correlation there?
But I think it is something, it's very, until we get some more decisions from the court on some of the key wording that's in the legislation, then we continue to have the issue of things like request for payment. What is that? Is a chase up email actually meets the requirements of a payment claim, so that takes a reference date. So I think the adjudicators should definitely be looking very closely at each of the elements of it before they then get into the actual nuts and bolts of the claim itself. But it is hard because it's not something that I see claimants actually deal with, and I have had some lawyers who have put forward arguments that have been, absolutely wrong on jurisdiction, and that becomes more time consuming and more of a pain point for the parties, that's for sure, because someone's paying for it. But it is because it is so complex.
I was just going to say that when it was first proposed, I think I thought it was a good idea, but I've moved away from that. One of the issues at the moment is there's to satisfy some of the provisions that just needs to say that it's a tax invoice, and if it's a tax invoice that refers to the contract, etc., it starts potentially reasonably easily becoming a payment claim. And when you get into some of the larger contracts in particular, and in fact a lot of the government departments like main roads, they require you first to put in your progress claim, which should be a payment claim, but then once they issue their payment schedule, you have to issue a tax invoice. And the tax invoice will also refer to everything. So the contract is actually making them put in what would probably technically be 2 payment claims, and so that's problematic. And it's not just in government contracts that it's like that. A lot of the mining contracts, a lot of the larger contracts have that, where there's a requirement first for a draft payment claim, and then once that's done, to subsequently put in an approved payment claim or an invoice or whatever. And so there are a lot of contracts that are in fact forcing people, if they want to get paid anything, to put in 2 documents that would probably pass the payment claim test. And so that's become problematic with that provision in the Act.
I'd also just say, my view is if you're claiming payment, then that's your request for payment. The fact that you issue something with the word invoice later is a second claim, but for the same reference date. Except if timeframes end up being that you're submitting that invoice after the next reference day, that you end up in real strife. But I think the other part that I've found over the last couple of years that's it's causing some more confusion is some of the information on people's websites, some firms' websites, QBCC's website. I've marked up a number of changes to their stuff, and there's still some things on there that are not technically correct. And that just misleads people because it isn't actually right. And I understand the political space, obviously. Lived and breathed it for 5 years, but trying to dumb it down or making it simple because that's the way people want to think of it or portray it doesn't actually help when the adjudicators have to consider the legislation, not what the QBC's website says is a schedule or is a claim or whatever. So it's just all those little things that are just create more confusion, unfortunately, and raise more jurisdictional issues.
Look, my view on the endorsement is rather blunt. I think to reintroduce it would be a mistake because it takes away from the simplicity, remembering what was said earlier on. When this legislation was introduced, it was to protect the small subcontractor getting paid. And I have seen over the years, having done this now since 2004, I think I was one of probably the first registered adjudicators in Queensland, so many people were just sticking the endorsement on everything. Every piece of paper that went out had the endorsement on them. And they were losing the opportunity to pursue things further. There's also the other side of not putting an endorsement on anything, and then all of a sudden at the end of the job out comes one document with an endorsement on, almost an ambush claim in some instances. So I think that the idea of keeping this as simple as possible for the small end of town who really don't know what they're doing, if I could be as blunt as that, the way in which it is presently structured without the endorsement is of assistance to them.
Except that we've got this ridiculous sub-paragraph that says, have a request for payment, which every adjudicator considers, they make up their own mind as to what they consider a request is, or the having a written document with the word invoice on it without it actually being one. But yeah, and there was discussion about actually requiring it to be a tax invoice, so at least there's legislation saying what that needs to have. But the government didn't want to do that because some people aren't registered for GST. But what it would have done is actually given a pro forma. It would have given some guidance for adjudicators and for the parties to try and identify what is a claim, because now we have every claim, every document is potentially a claim. The same, as you say, everyone used to put the endorsement on everything.
I don't want to belabor the point here. One of my clients put in a couple of invoices for a job, and he just lost his rights because it was all from the same reference date. And that's a problem. I think there should be a formal process that you say, right, we're on for adjudication and there's a document that does that. That's my personal view, and obviously based on a little bit of experience. Obviously the others have different views. And what about the audience? Let's see. What do you say?